All right, friends, you are watching the webcast for NG2 right now. You can see New Glenn out there on the pad. But an important part of what's happening today with New Glenn is we are sending ESCAPADE to Mars. And I got the extreme privilege, the honor, if you will, to talk to the principal investigator of ESCAPADE, Dr. Rob Lillis. Check it out. Rob, for someone who doesn't know, what does the principal investigator of ESCAPADE do?
So the principal investigator is entrusted by NASA to execute the entire project. So it's kind of like the buck stops with me. I have a team of excellent people around me, but I'm responsible for the production of the data, the definition of the science requirements, the execution, the technical aspect of the mission. I think it's a great model for how NASA sort of entrusts the completion, execution of a mission to a partner like UC Berkeley, where I'm based.
And ESCAPADE is a really special project. We are so excited to be taking it up today on NG2. Tell me a little bit about what ESCAPADE does.
So ESCAPADE is a twin spacecraft mission going to Mars, orbiting Mars to sample the ways in which Mars and its upper atmosphere respond to changes in space weather. By space weather, I mean the million-mile-per-hour stream of charged particles that the sun is at all times throwing out. Sometimes that stream gets gusty, and the gustiness, essentially, of it is what we call space weather. And there's all sorts of ways that can happen. With one single spacecraft, we've only been able to measure either the solar wind itself or the effect of the solar wind closer to the planet. We've either had the cause or the effect, but separately. With ESCAPADE, we can have two spacecraft simultaneously cause and effect at the same time. And so that's the breakthrough that ESCAPADE is going to provide us in understanding the processes by which the atmosphere is stripped away.
And once we understand that, I mean, how does that affect us here back on Earth or future Mars missions?
Right. So it's important for a couple of reasons. One, I think we're just curious as to how planets evolve in general. Like over the billions of years, planets, they change their atmospheric composition. They're more volcanically active, and that can affect the atmosphere too. And so this is an important piece, it isn't the only piece, of course, but it's an important piece of the puzzle of Mars climate evolution. And that's interesting just because we love to explore as humans. But it's also important because space weather can have a practical effect on robotic spacecraft that we send to Mars future, and also humans when they explore Mars. This is important for a couple of different reasons. One, a big space weather event, what's often called an interplanetary shock or a coronal mass ejection, when the sun belches out a couple billion tons of hot plasma, often at high speed, high density. As that shock expands through the solar system, it accelerates particles to really high energies, high enough energies that they can go right through a spacesuit and cause astronaut health problems.
Right.
And so the radiation on the surface of Mars, when you get a big enough coronal mass ejection, you can get 100 days worth of radiation in one day. This happened last year.
Wow.
This happened last year, right. June 6th, 2024. The usual background level radiation was increased by a factor of 100 for that day when that happened. And so if you're an astronaut on the surface of Mars, you don't want to be out away from your radiation shelter when that happens. And so ESCAPADE's measurements are going to enable us to better forecast those radiation hazards. There's another reason too why ESCAPADE's important, because we're also going to be studying the ionosphere. So this is a layer of gas in the upper atmosphere that's ionized. And that's important because that layer, it distorts radio signals as they pass through it. And understanding the variability and the structure of that ionosphere will help us to correct for those distortions.
For communication.
Communication, but also for navigation, because there's going to want to be GPS on Mars eventually. And understanding how the ionosphere distorts the GPS signals will enable astronauts to know better where they are. All these things are taken into account on Earth. It's all behind the scenes. So your phone doesn't have to show you how they're correcting for it, but that's all behind the scenes on Earth. we want to be able to do that same error correction on Mars, and ESCAPADE will help us understand the ionosphere.
It's really cool to know that we're thinking about these future problems now.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that are happening in the future, I mean, ESCAPADE is not going to be making it actually to Mars. The
Right.
spacecrafts aren't going to be there for at least 2027.
That's right. That's right indeed. Yeah.
So what happens once ESCAPADE deploys?
Yeah.
Kind of tell me more about the trajectory.
Okay, well, so after it deploys, first of all, there's a few important checkouts we have to do. The first thing is we got to deploy the solar panels and we got to get it to speak to us. And so actually, the viewers will be interested to know that we may not hear from the spacecraft for up to 3 hours after launch. And that is by design.
Okay.
Because we have two antennas, one on either side of the spacecraft, and they only work one at a time. And we don't know which one necessarily is going to be pointed towards Earth initially. So if the one that turns on first happens to be pointed away from Earth, we got to wait 2 hours until it decides, oh, I'm not hearing from Earth, and it switches over to the other one. So no one should panic if we don't hear from it within that first hour. But once we know that we have signal, we're hearing from it, and we know the solar panels are deployed and they're facing the sun, so that's called power positive. So it's a safe and a stable mode. Then we can relax, and then we can start focusing on the longer term aspects of the mission. And you mentioned trajectory. So yes, we are taking quite an unusual path to Mars. We are going to spend about a year in a very large Earth orbit, fairly gravitationally bound to the Earth. We're calling this the loitering phase. It's in the shape of a kidney bean. It kind of goes like this. And next November 2026, we're going to come back to Earth after going more than 2 million miles away. We're going to come back to only 600 kilometers above the surface. We're going to use Earth's gravity and burn our engines at that point, taking advantage of Earth's gravity to slingshot ourselves toward Mars. Because early November next year is when the interplanetary window opens for a transit from Earth to Mars. So all Mars missions before us have had to wait until this narrow 3 or 4 week window every 25 months. We're launching halfway between these two windows. So we're just going to kind of hang out in near Earth space until it's time to go to Mars. And this has never been done before. And this is really, really exciting because this actually opens up the possibility in the future. If humans want to actually settle Mars, we're going to have to send hundreds, maybe even thousands of ships to Mars within that 2 or 3 or 4 week window. And there aren't enough launch pads on Earth to reliably do that just within that window. So we could launch them over the course of a whole year, maybe, and we could like sort of queue them up,
right,
so that they're kind of lined up so they can go when that window opens. And so this is hopefully going to pioneer a way to essentially enable interplanetary settlement in the distant future. Who knows?
And once the mission actually starts, how long is the mission going to be going on?
So, so I mentioned November 2026. That's when we start our interplanetary cruise. We spend 10 months in that cruise to Mars, doing little trajectory correction maneuvers all the time, little tiny engine burns to like just, barely tweak our path so that we can intercept Mars in early September 2027. And that's when we got to do another big engine burn to be captured by Mars's gravity. And that's when we will be in Mars orbit. Then we spend another 7-8 months-ish adjusting the orbits.
Wow.
So first of all, lowering the orbits, then adjusting the orbits. And this is important because ESCAPADE is doing another thing that's never been done before, which is the first ever formation flying around another planet other than the Earth or
a lot of firsts on this
the
one.
Moon. It's kind of like pearls on a string. Both spacecraft have to get into the same orbit. And it takes a while to adjust both orbits to make that happen. And also in the middle of that, there's what we call solar conjunction, where the sun gets in the way between Earth and Mars, and we can't talk to it for a whole month. So we kind of just have to chill out, go into safe mode, and just wait. And so this is the reason why it's going to take us an additional 7 months after we get to Mars before we can start the science mission in spring 2028. And then we have an 11-month science mission, and that's also in...
So this is going to take us all the way into 2029.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's, I think, May 2029 is the nominal end of the science mission. And I mentioned the two spacecraft are going to be the pearls on a string. We do that for the first 6 months. And that's important because we want to know how the upper atmosphere of Mars is changing minute to minute. So in the past, with only single orbiter missions, we've had to wait 4 or 5 hours to see how things have changed. And by that point, the planet's turned a quarter rotation, things are different. We don't know how anything changes on short timescales at all on Mars. ESCAPADE is going to pass through the same part of the upper atmosphere twice in a quick succession, so 2 minutes to 30 minutes apart, to see how it changes on those short time scales. Once we're done with that, then we raise one orbit, we lower the other orbit, and then the two orbits are different, and they start precessing. This is a word for the orbital planes moving with respect to each other.
Okay.
And this allows the two spacecraft to get much further apart from each other to make those simultaneous cause and effect measurements that I mentioned earlier, to understand the real-time response of the upper atmosphere to the space weather events.
And so with all that, understanding how ESCAPADE works, knowing that this mission is going into 2029, how do you feel today?
I feel excited. I feel a little anxious, as everyone does on launch day, but I am super, super excited. I'm proud of everyone who worked on ESCAPADE, at Blue Origin, at Rocket Lab, at Berkeley, at Embry-Riddle, all of our partners. Advanced Space LLC, they were the ones who did most of the work to design this innovative path to Mars as well. And so I'm just so proud of the whole team. Probably thousands of people have worked on bits of it up to this point. And we're so excited to reach this day, the culmination of so much effort and the beginning of the next chapter.
And the last question I have for you is something I ask everyone, and that is there anything else you want to add or say or mention that I didn't ask about that you think is important to this interview?
So ESCAPADE is a very low-cost mission. ESCAPADE is only about 1/10 of the typical cost of a NASA planetary mission. This is a radical experiment by NASA in seeing whether they can accept slightly higher risk and less oversight in exchange for a much lower cost. And the idea being that overall you get way more science per dollar if you do this. And
We call it bang for your buck.
Bang for your buck, science for your dollar. And it's because we are embracing, as I said, a lighter sort of a touch by NASA. We're using more commercial off-the-shelf parts. There are fewer reviews. There are fewer sort of requirements. NASA's kind of letting us run a little more than they would typically.
Okay.
And NASA's oversight is often what drives a lot of cost. That's great, but it does come at a cost. And so this is hopefully a new way of doing at least a fraction of NASA's science portfolio with this higher risk, lower cost approach.
It's very exciting to have you here, to be able to interview you.
This is an exceptional sight. Just watching pieces of other rockets being put together and knowing that our booster, our upper stage,
It was all built right here.
it was all built right here. The fairings, the
Yeah.
payload adapter, it was all built right here. Yeah.
Well, Rob, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
So obviously a great interview and a great opportunity to be able to talk to Dr. Rob Lillis there. If you were just joining us, you are watching the webcast for NG2. If you're looking at your screen, you might notice we have a new L time, which is L minus 28 minutes and about 30 seconds. Now, to keep you guys updated, we know that the weather is now clear. You're like, all right, that's some good news, right? Well, we have also learned that the launch team is looking into an issue with our ground support equipment at the pad. So we wanted to give you an update on that. And of course, we're going to keep monitoring everything happening around NG2.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when you look at a rocket, you're like, oh, the rocket's going to go. There is a lot of engineering that also goes into the ground systems. That's the ground
Absolutely.
system of the pad. That is the ground systems for the telemetry and the communications. We need to be tracking the vehicle. But like out there on the pad, that pad actually is a feat of engineering in its own right. In fact, this Launch Complex 36, we were talking about it earlier in the webcast, it's been used as a launch complex for decades before us. But we
Great history.
Great history, but we basically cleared it out and built it back up again. The amount of power, data, propellants, all these lines that are going up there. You see the two towers, the one on the right will eventually have crew coming off of it. Slightly off the shot to the left, we've got the water tower. There you got a kind of a back out view so you can see a little bit more. There's a lot that goes on out there. We've got this huge, what we call our propellant farm. There's a lot that goes on out there. So we need that to also be working and working properly and in right conditions to keep the rocket ready to go as it ticks down. And then when we will turn, obviously, the show, if you will, over to the rocket. But in the meantime, there's a lot of work happening in the ground system. So if something is out of line, pressure, data, power, that then could translate down the line,
Right.
Down the pipes, literally, to the rocket, we have to check it out. So our team is on it. But, we do have a little bit of time here to do so. But it looks like the weather might be clearing up. You live here in Florida. This is wild.
Just
How do you
wait
put up with
10
this?
minutes. It just keeps on a constant rotation. But I will say, you know, it is great to see NG2 on the pad, ready to go. You know what they say, if it's going to happen out there. And so right now, I'm going to toss it back over. Again, you are watching the webcast of NG2. We're at L-minus 26 minutes before this historic launch. Well, if you take a look on your screen, we're at L-minus just under 24 minutes. And Ariane, you and I have the distinct pleasure of being joined today by our very own Eddie Seyfert. And Eddie is one of my favorite people to talk to about engines. Eddie knows all things engines, as do you.
Eddie. Coming to you
with
live.
Eddie. We're coming
of today's show. So our BE4 engines, which are manufactured in Kent, Washington and in Huntsville, Alabama, they're tested at Launch Site 1 at our BE4 engine test stand, as well as at the historic 4670 test stand. Now, I'm a former test guy, and these BE4 engines are a medium performing variant of a high performance architecture, and the teams that test these rocket engines are just eking out more and more and more thrust, better ISP for these engines that serves our customers. So like, for example, this year we delivered our 30th BE4 engine to our customer, United Launch Alliance, and in the building that was behind me when this webcast started, we have multiple shipsets worth of BE4 engines for New Glenn.
Eddie, do you feel like you have a particular love for one or the other, the BE4 or the BE3? I know you were out in West Texas for a long time. We do a testing of all of our engines really there, but do you have a favorite?
Well, no, it's impossible to have a favorite, right? They're all great engines. For example,
You can't say you love one of your babies more than the other, huh, Eddie?
no, well, they're all great engines, right? BE3U, which runs on liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen, is an open expander cycle, right? Those two molecules come together and they create a lot of energy and steam. And you know, BE3U originally started from the BE3 engine that now has flown 36 successful times on New Shepard, but they baselined it at 160,000 pounds of thrust. When it first flew earlier this year in January, it flew at 174,000 pounds of thrust. And this team is kicking butt. They keep increasing those thrust levels, keeping the performance high, and really it's all about the upper stage when it comes to the payload.
And you see they're actually on the shot. We've got the the two nozzles in the second stage of the BE3U.
Oh, wow.
Those are huge nozzles. Eddie, do you want to talk about why those nozzles are so large on the BE3Us? Why do we have to have such massive nozzles?
Right, so in the vacuum of space, these nozzles don't have the atmosphere to push back in them and crumple them when the exhaust is being exhausted at supersonic, so faster than the speed of sound velocities. And that extra nozzle just gives you more momentum and higher specific impulse, right? 30 to 40 seconds more specific impulse, right? The analogy I like to use is if I had a big red balloon here in front of me, it would have pressure inside of it as a chamber, like a pressure vessel, and I would be holding it by its nozzle. It's a very technical term. And if I let it go, the big red balloon would essentially fly away. So I'm not saying our rocket engines are big red balloons, but it's the analogy that I like to think of.
That's a good way.
At least
Eddie,
they're blue balloons.
yeah.
If they're going to be balloons, Eddie,
They don't have to be
come on.
red. They've been big blue
Sorry,
balloons. He
big-
also, I remember, I went to
that's
one of his. He hosts these things here at Blue Origin where we can learn more about updates with different things happening with our engines. And he was explaining essentially the shower head method and how shower head is very similar to how an engine works. But Eddie, I think it's so great to be able to talk to him anytime about engines, and we're so grateful for him. Of course, he is out with our employees. The best viewing spot to see NG2 take to the skies. You're looking at NG2 right now on the pad, and in this moment, we're going to toss it back over to the rocket, because coming up here shortly, we have a very exciting go, no go poll. So we're going to toss it over the rocket and kind of await that poll.
Copy. All stations, this is the LV on count 1 with the go poll for final configurations and terminal count. Understand we are still pending GME final configurations and LVHD retraction, also pending weather. This is the go poll for final configs and terminal count. GC.
GC is go pending retraction of LVHD10.
LC1.
LC1 is no go pending day of launch PDI load.
Understand you are a go pending the load. LC2.
LC2 is go.
LSO.
Go.
OSM.
Go with the exception of weather.
RC.
Go.
ESR.
ESR go pending LVHT and PDM.
AC.
Go pending LVHT retraction.
Recovery.
Go.
GLI.
Go.
BMD.
Go.
GC, LC1, LC2. Perform final configurations for terminal count. Report when ready for terminal count gate checks.
LC2 copy.
Oh, this is RC on count 1.
GC copy.
Go ahead, RC.
A lot of potential sea surveillance violation with a cruise ship. We're still working on Coast Guard to make contact. So I'll give you an update as soon as I have it.
LD copies.
So you just heard the go pulled there. It seems like a conditional go according to the weather. So we are going to continue to our terminal count, and we're going to continue to also keep an eye on the weather. So lots of things that we are tracking at this moment in time.
I think we should note there just a second. So first of all, our launch director, Megan Lewis, that lady is a boss.
Yes.
She is fantastic. There's a lot of things to coordinate there, and you heard various teams giving their go, no go, and go pending. And obviously we have to track a lot, especially in these last 15 minutes. And her job in that room is to coordinate. You saw the people in the front room, but then there's also essentially what's like an engineering support room in the back.
Yeah.
So that they go off and they track things, they run things down and report back on making these clears. So they are go pending because they want to launch this rocket, and they think that there's still a chance here. So more drama.
Yeah, we're excited. This has been quite the show as you are watching NG2. We're at L-14 minutes, but in order to build a road to space for the benefit of Earth, we've got to radically reduce the cost of access to space by having our reusable rockets. So here's everything that you need to know about New Glenn.
The capability, the payload volume of New Glenn was all developed not only for today, but for the future. We have a first stage that is designed from the ground up to be operationally reusable. We have a second stage that is one of the largest upper stages to ever fly to space.
New Glenn being a reusable launch vehicle is so beneficial to future lunar missions. It's going to allow us to keep that cadence going, where we'll be able to launch multiple landers, multiple refueling flights over and over again, so that we can reduce the cost of access to the moon.
It is designed to be an incredibly resilient vehicle with a tremendous amount of mass to orbit capability. We can do anything from low Earth orbit missions, where we're deploying a whole lot of small spacecraft, to geostationary missions where we've got a large monolithic spacecraft.
We can do very large modules of future commercial space stations on a single launch. We can take dozens and up to 50 to 100 satellites per New Glenn mission. It is our avenue to significantly reduce the cost of access to space.
We've been working with a huge variety of customers, and they're really rethinking their business models because of what New Glenn unlocks for them.
New Glenn will be able to launch a lander to the moon in a single launch. That's an incredible capability that this one launch vehicle will be able to do. We built these landers specifically to fly with New Glenn. And that's what's so great about having the launch vehicle and the landers all part of Blue Origin, is that we work together.
It really is the infrastructure, the building block, the foundation of how Blue Origin will enable building a road to space.
We've got a number of programs we're working on, like Blue Ring, which will benefit national security customers and other customers, providing on-orbit maneuvering capabilities. We're working, of course, with our own internal teams to deliver new capabilities that Blue is bringing. But New Glenn is going to be delivering all kinds of spacecraft today, all kinds of new systems, all kinds of capabilities. And New Glenn is the vehicle that can take NASA or anyone, anywhere in the solar system.
We foundationally developed New Glenn for what we think space is going to look like 50 to 100 years from now.
It will allow us to go to the moon, to asteroids and other planetary objects, and use those resources to learn how to live off the land in space.
New Glenn is going to unlock so much potential that we don't even know about yet. We're laying that infrastructure so that the next generation can do amazing things in space.
All right, we are at L minus 10 minutes and 34 seconds to go from New Glenn's second launch. And Tabitha, you recently had the chance to chat with our CEO, Dave Limp, about NG2 and what this mission means for science, but also for Blue Origin.
I certainly did. It was so great to be able to sit down and actually talk with him. And I think you guys are going to be surprised to learn just how much of this moment has really been building up over time, and how even when he was a child, you know, Dave himself had an interest in space. Check it out. This is a really big moment for Blue Origin. Can you tell me how NG2 compares to NG1?
Yeah, I think NG1 was obviously our first mission. There was lots to learn, and we did learn a lot, and unbelievably successful in that we made our goal, which was to get to orbit. This time we're going to be a little bit more ambitious, and we want to not only get to orbit, but we have our first paying customer this time with ESCAPADE, and get them off to Mars. That's the first part of our goal, and then the second part of the goal is to land the booster out on Jacqueline. And if we don't, we have more over here in the factory that we're building, but we're going to give it our best shot.
Never tell me the odds is pretty fitting for this booster. You know, we are taking our second attempt at landing it for the first time. How are you going to feel if we land it?
Well, I certainly will not channel my inner C-3PO. I will be very ecstatic. I'll be on pins and needles up to that point, but it would be a huge achievement for the team and for Blue. I think that we have a good chance, but if we don't, like I said, we can build more, but I will be over the moon if it happens.
Now, New Glenn is obviously just one of the many systems we have here, right? We have New Shepard, we have Lunar, we have in-space systems. How are all of those organizations really working together to further our ultimate goals?
Yeah, I think each component of what we do has a piece of trying to get millions of people to work and live in space, and they all have their individual. But as it relates to this particular mission, a huge amount of people have put work into it. Obviously, our engines team in building both the engines for the booster, the BE4s, and the BE3Us for the upper stage. We also have a huge amount of work by the obviously New Glenn team building this vehicle, but also New Shepard has been a pathfinder. So all our avionics fly on New Shepard first, so that we can get a sense of what's going on there and get a sense what it's like to have flight-ready hardware. And so it takes a whole team, and it's a very big cross-functional effort across Blue.
We have more than 10,000 employees here that are very excited about this moment. I'm one of them. What is your message to those who are going to be watching our webcast and be watching NG2 take to the skies?
Well, I think everybody will be a little bit on pins and needles, I'm sure. But I would say that this is a culmination of a lot of work from a lot of teams. It's not the end point of our journey. Obviously, we have a lot more rockets to make and a lot more customers to make happy as we move forward. But to the extent we're successful here, I hope everybody at Team Blue takes a pause, smiles a bit, celebrates, because it'll be a great achievement for us. And we'll take that deep breath, we'll sort of embrace the moment and then move on, because we have a lot of customers waiting for us to succeed. And there's nothing that makes you happier in business and in your life when you see the smile on customers' faces.
Did you ever think that you would be doing something like this in your career when you're watching your rockets launch? No?
No, not in a million years. I was very happy making Fire TVs and Echoes, but it is a boyhood dream, and so to be able to have it, I kind of pinch myself every day and just amazed that I get to wake up and help this and lead this amazing team of people build incredible technology like New Glenn.
I mean, in reference to that, one of the first things they ask you when you come onto Blue Origin is, what is your first memory of space? What is your first memory of space?
Yeah, I have a lot of pictures. It turned out my third, fourth, and fifth birthday, I have these old Polaroids of the cake, and they all have rockets on it. I was enamored with rockets as a kid, and never took the path where I thought I'd be running a rocket or a rocket company, but it turns out that it was very early in my life that I had a lot of love for it.
And we're so grateful to have you here at the helm. Dave, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it was such a great interview to have a moment to sit down with our CEO and talk with him. If you are just tuning in, this is the launch of NG2. We are at L minus under 6 minutes, and we have to tell you guys right now we are tracking a cruise ship that is in the area and closely tracking weather, as we heard in the Go poll. But my understanding is that by the time it comes to our moment of launch, that cruise ship should be out of the way. But we are still keeping our eyes on that weather, Ariane.
Absolutely. But with that, we're under 6 minutes to go. Let's go out to Eddie, because you realize we're about 5 minutes to go from the launch. Eddie, how's everybody feeling out there?
Yeah, it is hype out here. We are so excited to be at less than 5 minutes before launch. We're excited to be here.
Eddie, is that guy on a chicken? A rooster?
Yeah, we got Rooster, and the flag. Everybody's ahead, Rooster. And ESCAPADE, and this is the team that's launching the rocket today. They helped build it.
Amazing. They are absolutely psyched. What we're waiting for here is a go, no go, a final go, no go. We're bringing this down to the minute on this one. We want to launch before our window, so we're waiting on the team to determine if that's way to go.
Oh, Eddie. Let's go blue. Let's go blue. Thank you so much. We are hyped. They are hyped. Since we are at essentially L minus 4 minutes, let's go ahead and toss it back over to the rocket right now. All right, friends, we appreciate you patiently waiting. So I have an update for you. Today's NG2 launch is scrubbed due to weather, specifically the cumulus cloud rule. We're reviewing opportunities for our next launch attempt based on forecasted weather. I know we were all really excited to watch NG2 take to the skies today. We came down to the wire, and then there you have it. But my name is Tabitha Lipkin. This is Ariane Cornell. We're going to keep you guys posted and updated with all the information that we get as it becomes available to us. That will be on our social media. And until then, we look forward to seeing you at our next launch, and stay cool. Gradatum for Rossiter.